We'd like to thank Mainspring Companies for sponsoring Season 1 of The Next Entrepreneur. Mainspring celebrates the entrepreneurial journey, and we are very grateful for their support.
We focus on helping them build knowledge, understanding, and trust. And why is that important? Well, consistent information, right, provides knowledge. Knowledge over time leads to better understanding. Understanding over time leads to trust. And trust builds goodwill. And once you've established goodwill, you have license to operate.
Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast, and I am here today with our producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions, and our guest today is Mr. Tim Johnson, founder and CEO of the TJC Group and executive producer and host of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, buddy. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I guess I first met you probably 27 years ago, when you were at ABC Pelican chapter.
That's right, 1994.
Yeah. And man, you were such an impressive guy back then. And nothing's changed in that way. So congratulations on a great career and a lot of success with your business. So I wanted to start by just getting a little backstory, you know, where you grew up and your early life. Give us a little detail there.
So I grew up in a little place called Pine Prairie, Louisiana. It's about 40 miles directly south of Alexandria and Evangeline Parish. And I tell the story that I went K through 12 on the same little public school campus. And my mother was an English teacher. My father was a machinist in a paper mill in Allen Parish, a little place called Elizabeth, Louisiana. And I loved to hunt and play basketball, and just had a wonderful childhood. I mean, it could not have been better. And I had some success as a basketball player and got recruited a little bit. And I tell the story of went up to a recruiting visit at Louisiana Tech, and I was a year younger than Carl Malone. Carl Malone, great player at Louisiana Tech. And so the first person they introduced me to on my recruiting trip to Louisiana Tech was Carl Malone. Had a great visit and got back home that evening, and my dad said, well, how'd it go? And I said, well, they offered me a partial scholarship, Dad, not a full scholarship. I said, I think their reasoning was, we have Carl Malone. We probably don't need Tim. And I think they probably made a good decision, as it turns out. But that was my childhood. I went to LSU at Alexandria, played basketball a couple of years, and then came to Baton Rouge to finish my degree at LSU. I'd always loved LSU football and LSU basketball. Wanted to go to school here. Came here and finished my degree, met my wife, and been here ever since. That would have been, came here and got out of high school in 82, came here in 85, been here ever since.
So you started your job out of college. You started working for the Louisiana State Senate, right?
Yeah, my dad was in local politics back in Evangeline Parish, and so he knew the state senator from our parish, a gentleman by the name of John Saunders, a wonderful gentleman who's a judge back in Evangeline Parish now, in a wheelchair, and has been for 40 plus years. But got me a job while I was at LSU as a student worker in the state Senate. Right. And met a lot of folks that I enjoyed the work, enjoyed the politics and being in that environment. And so got out of LSU with a degree in political science, as a matter of fact. Went to law school at LSU for a year, didn't do very well, didn't like it very much, made the decision that I was probably not or didn't want to be a lawyer. And so I needed to find a job. And so I reached back out to the people that I had worked with as a student, and they welcomed me back and went to work there and stayed there for 5 or 6 years right out of college.
And what kind of work were you doing there?
I was an analyst for one of the committees. Basically, they taught me how to write legislation. I would research and write legislation. So 39 state senators in the Louisiana Senate, they'd have ideas for legislation in various subject areas. So I had a set of subject areas that I had researched and was responsible for. And if anyone requested new legislation in that area, I would be given the responsibility to draft that bill and they'd file it, and we'd go through the process. But that's what I did for the state senate.
Man, what a great insight on how government works, huh?
Well, the relationships that I developed there. I worked for two guys primarily while I was working for the state senate. One was Foster Campbell, who is now in the public service public service commission, has been for years. But Foster was a North Louisiana Democrat populist, really kind of a liberal guy who was all about poor people and helping those who were less fortunate, and just believed it to his core and still does. And then the other guy I worked for was Mike Foster, who became governor of the state of Louisiana and served 2 terms and was a Republican and a conservative, and met people like Jay Darden and, just a host of folks that were in politics at the time in Louisiana, developed some great relationships, and it was pretty beneficial to me and my consulting firm years later. So
from there you went to ABC?
ABC. Well,
Association of Builders and Contractors.
Associated Builders and Contractors. And the way that happened was, because I was a basketball guy, my boss in the state senate was the volunteer athletic director at St. Aloysius Catholic School. And he came to me one day and said, "Hey, I need a 8th grade basketball coach." And he said, "Are you willing to help?" And I said, "Can I make any money?" He said, "I'll pay you a couple of $100s a month." This was 1989. I said, "A couple of $100 a month, I'm in." And so I started coaching the 8th grade boys basketball team there. And about 2 weeks before the season started, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I just had to let my 6th grade boys basketball coach go. You want to coach the 6th grade boys?" And he said, "I'll pay you a couple of $100 for that one too." I said, "I'm in." So I was coaching the 6th and 8th grade boys basketball teams at St. Aloysius. And the dad of one of the players came to me about 2 weeks into practice, and he said, "You look like a guy with a lot of energy. I'm starting a consulting firm. We're going to be doing work with industry. I need somebody to help me at night on the weekends." He said, "You want to make some extra money?" He said, "I'll pay you a couple of $100s a month." As it turns out, I said, "I'm in." And so I was coaching basketball, working full-time in the Louisiana Senate, and then I started this consulting business in the evening, working with industrial chemical plant and refinery managers on their community engagement. And we started that work in 1990, and that has been the basis of the consulting firm that I've had now for 31 years.
Wow.
Yep.
So, and as you continued on your career path doing some other things, you kept that consulting.
Kept it. And so when the folks, the folks that sponsor or actually support financially the craft training center at Associated Builders and Contractors, or the industrial plant managers, they pay the cents per hour fee to all of their contractors for all the work they do in their facilities. And so I had all these relationships with these plant managers who sat on the joint oversight board at ABC with the contractors running the training center. And one of those plant managers reached out to me when Lee Jenkins, our good friend who is now an executive with Performance Contractors, was leaving ABC. He was in that job. One of those plant managers reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be good for this position. Why don't you put your resume in and go talk to the folks down at ABC?" And I said, "I'm not looking for another job. I got, basically got 3 already." And he said, "No," he said, "Trust me." He said, "You need to put your resume together." He said, "Go down and talk to these people. Just do me a favor, go down there and talk to them." And so I did, and I sat for an interview with them one afternoon, and the 3 people who interviewed me were an old gentleman by the name of Dudley Mitchell, who was the director of the chapter, the staff director of the chapter, Art Favre, and Eddie Risponi. Those are the 3 guys that interviewed me. And as it turns out, they offered me the job, and I took it contingent on being able to keep the consulting work that I did. And they said, "No, you're working with all these plant managers. They're real important to us. We want you to keep that consulting work." And so I went to ABC as the director of the training center and kept doing consulting work at the same time.
That training center is just really become something really significant under your leadership there. I mean, tell us about what you accomplished there.
Well, I think I appreciate you saying that, and certainly we hope we had an impact there in a positive way. But I think that the truth of the matter is that institution was established by those contractors and those plant managers, and had a track record of success when I got there. My job was to try to sustain it and maybe build on it. And I think we did that. But, It, as far as I know, Andrew, to this day is the largest and I believe finest privately funded construction craft training center in the United States. 1,700 students every semester. So it's basically a small community college there. And they just do really, really good and important work, transforming individuals who may not feel like they want to go to the university or to a college, but they feel like they have some gifts in terms of being able to work with their hands and turning these folks into what we refer to now as construction craft professionals, because they are professionals and they're really good at what they do. But we trained electricians and pipe fitters and welders and heavy equipment operators and process instrumentation technicians. And so I just really, really enjoyed that work. And I tell people all the time that I hope that I can work for myself in my business for the rest of my life. But in terms of the jobs that I've had, that's the best one I ever had.
Yeah, I sense just a tremendous pride in your work there. But you increased your capacity there at ABC, went from the director of education to the executive director.
That's right. So I spent 3 years as the director of the training center. Director of education was the title. And after 3 years, Dudley Mitchell, the gentleman who was the chief staff officer who had originally hired me, had left, and another well-known name, Michael McDuff, who is executive director of the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors today, became executive director. Michael had been there on staff for years, and they promoted him when Dudley left. And after about 2.5 years in that role, Mike decided that he'd move on as well, and he resigned, and the leadership offered the job to me as executive director after the work we had done in the training center, and I took that job, stayed there almost 4 more years before Andy Dupuy and Jim Bernhardt and the Shaw Group made an offer, one of those offers I couldn't refuse, and I left there to go to work for Shaw with the understanding that I could continue to do the consulting work.
Yeah. So, Shaw is such back then there was such a dynamic company. And when I think of that position that you had as director of business development, I mean, that must have been some pretty interesting times for you.
Pretty heady times. For those, you talk about entrepreneurs, and that's what this podcast is all about. I don't know that there has been a more dynamic, more definitive, more exceptional entrepreneur that this state has ever produced than Jim Bernhardt. Love him or hate him, you can't argue with the success that he's had. And being able to work around him and with him was a learning experience, and something that I hold as very important in my career.
Tim Barfield was on the podcast, and he echoed your sentiments exactly. Yeah. Just obviously a very impressive experience there. And so you did that for a number of years, right?
5 years.
And then is it after that gig when you went fully in on? Well, what was that? What was going on in your mind where you're like, okay, enough of this side stuff. Let's go all in.
After 5 years at Shaw, the consulting business continued to grow, and I really enjoyed that work. But I got to the point that I had to make a decision. Either I was going to continue to grow my career at Shaw and have to leave the consulting business behind to focus on my career at Shaw, or I was going to leave my career at Shaw to focus on my consulting business. And so after a lot of prayer and discussions with my wife and my family and consternation over it all, I made the decision to leave Shaw and go to work for myself, basically full time. And I did that now 16 years ago. And I think it was the right decision for me. Had a great career, loved the people and the work that I did at Shaw, but I've really enjoyed sort of being an entrepreneur and being out there on my own and the challenges that come with that.
Yeah, so when you look at what your company does today, and I'm going to ask you to define that here in a minute, and then you look back at your career experiences up to that point. I mean, you had governmental, you had big business, you had association directorship, director of education. That's a lot of moving parts there. And I was just curious how the diversity of those experiences played out in your successful start of your business.
Well, I think you've identified something there that's critically important, right? Anytime you're in business, you have to have a specific set of skills that you can offer in the marketplace, right? Whether you're in construction or whether you're in consulting or whatever it may be. But it is the relationships that you build over time that help you become really successful, right? And how you take care of those relationships. And so if you think back over my career, I had that time in the Louisiana Senate where I worked with people like Mike Foster and Foster Campbell and Jay Darden and all of those people who were involved in politics over the years and built all those relationships. And then I left there and went to work for Shaw and built relationships with people like you and Andy Dupuy and Art Favre and Eddie Risponi and Jerry Risponi and Roland Toops and Don McCollister and Richard Gill. And you think about all these titans of the Mike Polito and Lenny Lemoyne, these titans of the Louisiana construction industry. And then, having, while I was doing both of those, working with all of these the plant managers at ExxonMobil and BASF and Syngenta and all of these industrial plant folks that I was building relationships with and working for. And so that really is the cornerstone of how I've built my business. It's, I only halfway jokingly tell people I really don't have a lot of skill. I just know everybody. And, there's a lot of truth to that, right? And it's really what's helped me, having been connected, to build my business over the years.
So tell us what TJC Group does.
Very simple. We boil it down this way, and I think going through COVID has helped me really narrow the focus even more, right? And you think about what's going on over the last year or so. We are stakeholder engagement specialists. We help our clients engage with their stakeholders and communicate with their stakeholders in a more meaningful way. What does that mean? Well, if I'm ExxonMobil and they're one of our great clients, then I've got a lot of stakeholders in my community. I've got my near neighbors. I've got my broader community. I've got elected members of the school board, elected members of the East Baton Rouge Parish Council. I've got my state senator, my state representative, my federal elected officials. I've got schools. I've got first responders. I've got a plethora of stakeholders in my community. And what my firm specializes in is helping them communicate with and connect to all of those stakeholders in a more meaningful way. We focus on helping them build knowledge, understanding, and trust. And why is that important? Well, consistent information, right, provides knowledge. Knowledge over time leads to better understanding. Understanding over time leads to trust, and trust builds goodwill. And once you've established goodwill, you have license to operate. You can even make a mistake from time to time, but if you've put enough goodwill in the bank, then you can continue to have your license to operate. And so we focus on those three words: knowledge, understanding, and trust. And we are experts in helping our clients do that with their stakeholders.
That's fascinating. I love that, having goodwill in the bank.
That's right.
So you do that through these caps, right?
That's one of the ways we do it. Right?
And tell us how a cap works.
So a cap,
what it means.
Right. A cap is a community advisory panel or a community advisory council. And that's really how I got into this business 30 years ago. That's what we started with. I facilitated or participated in my first community advisory panel meeting in October of 1990 with about 7 or 8 industrial facilities in St. Gabriel, East Iberville. It is the East Iberville Community Advisory Panel, and it has been meeting on the 4th Thursday of every month for the last 31 years. And that's where we started our business. And it's a very simple notion. It is bringing the leadership of an industrial facility or a group of industrial facilities together on a monthly or every other month basis to meet with representatives of the communities that surround those facilities to talk about issues that are meaningful and important to that community as it relates to having that facility there. We talk about environmental performance. We talk about economic impact and jobs. We talk about health and safety. We talk about what they make and how they make it and how we use those products in our daily lives. And it's an open dialogue that we facilitate that helps them do what we talked about before, build knowledge, understanding, and trust in their community. And it is that community then that gives them their license to operate. And we do that work now for about 82 or 83 individual industrial facilities across 8 states, all around the Gulf Coast. Up in Ohio, we have a panel that we do, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas. And so it's really about helping those facilities connect to those local community stakeholders.
Is there an example where in facilitating some of these CAP meetings where you saw something like a plant that had a good outcome because,
Sure.
Of course you have those, but can you tell any of your favorite stories about that? And then maybe vice versa where the general public, maybe they're upset or something. Tell paint a little picture
there's a
for us.
couple of stories that I can tell and I'll share with you. But one of the things I think we need to talk about to set the stage for the stories is, we talk about CAP meetings, these monthly or every other month meetings, always being candid, but never being confrontational. So that's part of the responsibility of being part of this group on either side, is that you have to be willing to say what you think. You have to be willing to bring perspective, even though it might not always be positive. And you have to feel comfortable sharing that. We tell our clients in this CAP business all the time that the most important information flow in this process is not from the plant through the CAP members back out to the community. Although if as a residual of the process that happens, we think that's good. The most important information flow is from the community through these members of the community advisory panel to the industrial plant leadership so that they have a better perspective on what the community is thinking and they can make decisions that reflect that. So if you think about some of the positive outcomes that we've had, just a recent example. So we work with a plant down in Jefferson Parish called Cornerstone Chemical. We do a lot of work for them, not just with their community advisory panel, but with stakeholder engagement and public affairs in general. And they had a situation where they were going to upgrade a facility. And as part of that upgrade, they were going to produce less of a byproduct because they were improving an overall facility. And that byproduct was hydrogen cyanide. Well, that hydrogen cyanide was under contract to another facility, and they had to keep producing that same amount that they had promised to ship to the other facility on their site. Well, the community heard about this whole idea because what they were going to have to do is, as a result of having upgraded this facility, they were going to have to build a new hydrogen cyanide plant to satisfy the customer. But they had been making hydrogen cyanide there for 60 years safely. But when people in the community got word of a quote, new hydrogen cyanide plant being built, you can imagine how they responded. And so we helped craft the message through their community advisory panel that, wait a minute, we're not going to make 1 pound more of hydrogen cyanide than we've been doing for 60 years. We created the message that said, we're just simply going to do it in a brand new state-of-the-art facility with all the latest environmental controls and all the latest safety equipment. You want us to do this. This is good for this community.
That's great.
And we helped that community advisory panel helped us shape that message and gave us advice on how to bring it to the community in the right way. And so all of that was done with a very positive outcome. And so that permit is in existence now. Because of COVID, the plant delayed the construction, but they were given permission, that public license to operate, because they provided knowledge that led to understanding that eventually built trust.
Right? I love it. Wonderful. Great story. Thanks for bringing color to that. Tim, let's take a quick break here, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location, just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work and retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. Their experience, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Tim Johnson, CEO of the TJC Group. Tim, you also have a TV show, which you are the executive producer of and the host of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Tremendous content. How long have you been doing that now?
The radio show started in 2012, and we started the TV show in late 2013. So we're going to start our 8th season of the television show in July.
So tell me what it is that you try to accomplish on that show.
Really similar to what you're doing here. It's about really shedding light on the real positive things that are taking place in the business community in Louisiana. We interview business leaders from across the state. We interview governmental leaders because we highlight government's impact on business through taxes and regulation, and both positive and negative, whatever that might be. But it's, I tell people all the time, if you're looking for gotcha, we're not the TV show or the radio show for you. That's not what we do. What we're here to do is to really promote and highlight what a wonderful place Louisiana is to do business, and what differentiates us, what makes us different. And that's what we really try to focus on. We interview the Jim Bernhards of the world, but we also bring in Dr. Monty Sullivan, who runs the Louisiana Community and Technical College system every year, Dr. Jim Henderson, who runs the University of Louisiana system every year. What a lot of people don't know, one of the largest university systems in America. They have 90,000 students in that system. We talk about education and workforce and policy and all of those things, and I've really enjoyed it.
So help us understand the difference between those two, TV and radio. How that, why both? How are they different? And then if you can touch on how those bring value back to your firm.
Sure. Well, to do that, I need to kind of tell you the story of how I got into it, because I had no background in radio, I had no background in television. Back in 2010, my friend Adam Knapp, who I know you have a relationship as well, runs the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, asked me to serve on the board of directors of the chamber. And so I obviously was honored by that and did that. And then he took it a step further and said, with your governmental background, would you be willing to chair our legislative committee at BRAC? And I said, sure. Well, about that time that happened, a friend of mine by the name of Matt Kennedy had just left WJBO, sat out a year, and had gone over to Guarantee Media, the new Talk 107.3 station.
Awesome.
And he was doing the morning show there, and he called me, and he said, hey, I understand you're chairing BRAC's legislative committee. Why don't you come on my morning show on Friday mornings during the legislative session? We'll talk about what's going on in the legislature and how it impacts business. And I said, well, I got to clear that with BRAC, but it sounds good to me. And so I did that. And we got a little buzz about it. And so I started thinking about the fact that, everyone loves sports talk radio. I'm a sports talk radio junkie, but nobody was doing business talk radio. And so Gordy Rush, who is the general manager of Guarantee Media, and Flynn Foster, who's the owner of Guarantee Media, both friends of mine. Flynn was actually serving on the BRAC board with me at the time. And I put together this little one-page outline sitting at my office at home at 11 o'clock one night. And I just came up with the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And I said, here's what we would try to do. And so I called Gordy and I said, hey, I got something I want to run by you. And this was right before Christmas. He said, well, why don't you come in the week after Christmas and you and Flynn and I can sit down and talk about it. So it's like the 28th of December. And I go in, I sit down with Gordy and Flynn, and I hand them this one-page outline for this idea I have for this radio show called the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And Gordy looks at it and he says, this is exactly what we want 107.3 to be. He said, how quickly can you be on the air? And I said, I don't know. He said, how about next week? I said, I don't think so. I've never done a radio show in my life. I have no idea what I would do. I said, give me a couple of months to prepare and then we'll do it. So in March of that year, we launched a weekly Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And So we did the radio show for almost a year, and I had a guest on by the name of Lee King. And Lee is the vice president for business services at Cox Communication. So all of the business services that Cox provides in Louisiana, if it's internet or phone or whatever it might be, Lee is responsible for that part of their business. And I had him on the show talking about the good things that Cox does for business. And we get to the end of the first segment, just like you and I did a few minutes ago, and he takes the headsets off and he says, just like this, he said, man, I've been listening to the show. I love what you're doing. He said, you ever thought about doing this on TV? And I said, no, man, until 10 months ago, I really hadn't thought about doing it on the radio. He said, I'm going to have somebody call you. And we finished taping, and I thought, yeah.
So he thought you had a face for TV.
Yeah, well, I think that's face for radio. But I thought, yeah, right. But literally that afternoon, I get a call from a guy by the name of Eric. He said, Mr. Johnson, my name is Eric Coleman. I'm with Cox Communication. I'm calling you about setting a meeting to talk about doing your radio show on television. We'd like to put it on TV. And literally 2 months later, we had the television version. That's how it happened. And I just fell into it. And so Cox did the show for us for a couple of years. We aired on their Cox Channel 4. We were in Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. And then I had this idea that I had WGNO, the ABC affiliate in New Orleans, actually reached out to us, and we ended up getting on that affiliate on Sunday morning, and then we got on an affiliate in Baton Rouge on Sunday morning, and Lafayette and Lake Charles.
How many households are you reaching out to now?
Well, the show is I don't know how many we hit every week, but the show is available in 1.5 million homes. And amazing. So it's on 7 network affiliates around the state. It airs on Sunday mornings, and it's just been something that, it's taken on a life of its own, so to speak.
How does that model work for TV and radio? I mean, as it relates to you? I mean, you going in the studio and they're handling everything? Is there a revenue stream on your end?
Yeah, so not so much on radio. And TV, we just try to make it break even. Quite frankly, we don't really try to make money because the exposure and I think it benefits my consulting firm, as you mentioned before. But it's 2 different shows, basically. I mean, people say, well, do you just play what you do on TV on radio or vice versa? And the answer is no. We tape 2,
Is it the same guest? Or?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Wow. But the radio show's an hour, the TV show's 30 minutes, and so they're not always not always the same guest.
So as executive producer, what does that mean for you?
Basically means I do I work with a great production company, Launch Media, here in Baton Rouge. John Jackson, not the out the bayou John Jackson that you may know of, but another John Jackson who owns this video company here in Baton Rouge. They do a fabulous job. They produce they record the show. We do it at their studios and the TV show, and it's all done really well. And then they upload it, they do post-production and upload it to all of our affiliates and put the commercials in it and do all that sort of thing. Executive producer just means this. I sell all the ads, I book the guest, I write the questions, and I interview. That's same thing you do here.
So you're taking the revenue and then you're paying for the production.
Paying for the production and the airtime. Quite frankly, if you get on these affiliates, you pay for that airtime.
I see. Okay, so I wanted to drop back a little bit, and I was just curious, when you did decide to go all in at TJC, you had all those relationships. What was the client build like initially? I mean, did you have enough there to feed the family, or was it a slow build? Did you ramp up quickly? What did that look like?
Well, a couple of things. I might argue that I still don't have enough to feed my family, but that's a whole nother story. So I was lucky, right? Because I had built this consulting business on the side of the full-time job that I had, right? So when I decided to leave, I wasn't starting from scratch. I had a book of business that I could rely on.
But you were walking away from some pretty nice compensation.
And that's what my wife and I had to deliberate about for a long, long time. Yeah, I had a pretty nice package at Shaw, and I made the decision to walk away from it. And there were 3 or 4 years there that we knew we were going to take a hit, but we did it for the freedom of working for yourself. And so, there were I had a book of business that I had to build up, but so I wasn't I had I had revenue coming in, but not nearly like it was to have a really nice salary from a established company like Shaw and a consulting business. So But it took us 3 or 4 years to get back to the point where we were, wanted to be. But again, the decision was a good one, and we've grown. We grew every year that I've been in business except last year.
Wow.
That was the one year we didn't have growth.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic.
Which speaks for most businesses,
Yeah.
for sure. But look, you've mentioned some of the companies that you've worked for, some of the biggest names in industry. It must be pretty gratifying when you secure one of those contracts with a firm like that. Tell us what that feels like to you and
Well, it's
what it means to your business.
First of all, the first sense you have is gratitude, right? You feel blessed to have the opportunity to work with those people and learn from those people. And then there's some sense of, the dog chasing the car, we caught it. Now what are we going to do with it, right? And so, the key to the thing is, and the reason we've been able to keep so much of this business for as long as we have, I think, is because we pay attention to our clients and their needs, and we try to stay proactive. And so there's always a sense of excitement, but there's always a little sense of, okay, now we got to deliver.
Yeah, it's
right?
time to perform.
Time to perform.
And they are used to people performing at the highest level. Right?
They don't. These corporations, these global corporations, they don't operate based on their feelings. They operate on their bottom line, and you've got to produce.
When you consider the growth of your business, what do you perceive to be the biggest challenge that you've faced up to this point?
Well, it's a couple of things. Number one, as you grow, you've got to have good people, right, to help you to do that. And one of the biggest challenges I have is letting things go and delegating. And I'm still learning to do that in a way that is still not where it should be. But that's always been a challenge. But it's just making sure you understand the client's needs and can respond to the client's needs in the way they expect you to, and helping the people who are working with you to see it the way you see it and the way you think. Of course, you always are open to the ideas of if you hire smart people, then that's what you expect. And so that balance of responding to the client and making sure you're meeting their needs and that your people are doing the same thing.
Was there a moment in the journey when you're full time at TJC where you're like, okay, we got this. We have reached stability, and I'm back to where I was, or at least a sense of financial stability? I mean, can you remember that? Like, okay, I think I got this now.
We're probably 3 or 4 years in. Yeah. I don't know that I would have been. You look back at things and you think how things might have been different one way or the other. And so anybody that's an entrepreneur, at some point people say, well, congratulations to you. You had the guts to go out there and do it and all that sort of thing. And you think back on it, and I wonder, had I not sort of built that business or that book of business under the security of the full-time job I had, would I have been as eager or as quick to jump into it full-time as a real entrepreneur at the point that I did? And I hope I would have been, but I don't know that for sure. And so, anytime anybody does anything that is successful, they had a lot of help along the way. And I've been blessed, and I try not to take that for granted. I've learned from some really, really smart people. I've made a lot of mistakes. But it is, I think, as you probably well know, it's through the mistakes that you learn, right?
Absolutely.
And that's, and so, I still feel like I'm still motivated, Andrew. I get up every day and I feel like I'm just starting, and that's
a great feeling.
I think that's the fire you got to have if you're going to do this.
So your biggest assets in your business are your personnel, right?
Yeah.
So you're not heavy in facilities and equipment, and so I'm intrigued. I see like
we don't have inventory,
right? Yeah. You're a consultant, right? And I watched the IT guy come in the office, IT vendor, and he's He walks in with nothing. He doesn't have a tool bag. It's all up here, right? And he gets on the computer and he fixes the problem and he leaves. And I look at that and I go, man, that seems kind of intriguing there. There's, and I was just thinking of, from your perspective, being in the consulting business, and you look at your clients that you deal with. I mean, some of them have massive infrastructure, investments in plants, for example, or even, some of the big industrial contractors that that have facilities and fab shops and equipment and
thousands of employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you, kind of look at your gig and feel pretty grateful for that, or is that just me thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence kind of deal?
Look, I think there's always the intrigue of what somebody else is doing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's normal human emotion. And so our business is just like anybody else's. There are really good days and there are really tough days, and you have to take them in stride, and you have to. I told my son this morning. My son is my middle son. My youngest son works for the firm. My middle son is a chef, and I told him this morning. I said, you got to make today what today's going to be. You can't let it happen to you. You got to be intentional, right, about your day. You can either sit there and let it happen to you, or you can try to take control of it and be intentional about it. And, I find some days I'm really intentional and I get a lot of stuff accomplished, and other days some things just kind of happen to me, right? And I think that's just normal, but you have to keep the right perspective, and you have to get up every day hungry and want. I love what I do. I love the people I do it with. I love the clients, and I love the team that I've built, and just a lot of really smart people that I get to work with and learn from every day.
So, I mean, when you look at the bio of your staff, I mean, you've got some very impressive personnel. And tell me, what are the challenges there? I mean, if you look at being in the consulting business, I'm guessing the challenges that are going to come up most revolve around personnel,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
And you're managing a lot of accomplished individuals, intelligent individuals, and doctors and PhDs and managers of all kinds. What's been the biggest challenge for you in that respect?
Knowing when to push them and knowing when to pull them back a little bit, I think is biggest challenge. When you've got really smart people who are accomplished in their own right, and I've been lucky to build a team of those kind of people. You don't have to do a lot of motivating, really. You just have to help guide and make sure that you get the right person in the right seat on the right bus, right? For that particular piece of work that you might be doing. And, the team is diverse, it's smart, and it's accomplished. But the most important let me say the most important three things that I look for, I guess, in this team that I think I've built is, number one, I want you to be curious. Are you curious? Do you want to learn? Are you always, striving to pick up more information? That's critically important. Number two, I want people who just simply get things done, right? Because you can be really smart. You can have but you got to have the ability to finish. You got to be able to take a situation and say, I got this piece of work that I need to do for this client. What's it going to take to get it done in the timeline that's set forth for me? And so you got to find people that can do that. And then the third thing is, I just want people who come to work with a good attitude, that are adding value to the culture of what you're trying to do. Those are the kind of people your clients want to work with, and it's certainly the kind of people I want to work with as well. And so over the years, I've been hit or miss on that, just like most people have. I mean, hiring is a crapshoot, right? You get it right sometimes, you get it wrong sometimes. But this team I have today, and that's not to say anything disparaging about anybody that's worked for us before. We've had really good people that have been with us before and left. But this team I have today, I've got a lot of confidence in, and I think the clients that we have and that we pursue seem to have a lot of confidence in them as well. You know, they say if you're a leader, you need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And I say all the time that I'm blessed that that's a really big pool. There are a lot of people out there that are smarter than me.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Okay, Tim, let's get another word from our sponsor, and we will be right back. We would like to thank Geartrain for their support of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. Geartrain is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Geartrain also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Geartrain technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Geartrain. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Tim Johnson, CEO of TJC Group. So, Tim, tell us about something that you're working on right now that excites you.
Well, in fact, I mentioned to you during the break that I spent most of the morning working on this today. We have a really unique opportunity to take this advisory panel, advisory council process that we've been working with and trying to perfect over the last 30 years to a new segment that we're really excited about. About 2.5 years ago now, Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul and I met, and he asked us to take this advisory panel, advisory council process that we had been doing for industrial plants for 30 years and bring it to his police department.
Wow.
And so 2 years ago, we created the Baton Rouge Police Department Chiefs Advisory Council, and it's made up of about 30 leaders from the community. And we've been meeting now for 2 years, and it has been an overwhelming success. In fact, Chief Paul has said some really nice things publicly about the work that we've done. And that gave us the idea that, we've done this for industrial facilities, all over the country. Why can't we do it for police departments all over the country? So over the course of the end of last year, first part of this year, we developed basically a 20-page business plan that says we're going to take this as a fully funded turnkey opportunity to 50-plus police departments all around the country. And we're working to create a foundation for police department advisory councils that would fund it. We're working with folks like the National Urban League. We're going to be meeting with the U.S. Department of Justice soon. We're working with the Koch Foundation. We're in conversations with NFL and NBA players associations. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to take this process that we've used in industry for all these years to help these industrial plants build knowledge, understanding, and trust in their communities, and do the same thing for police departments in a time where it has never been more important to do it.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, timing couldn't be better.
Right. We've seen the process work in industry for 30 years. So we've seen this huge need in a time where it's never been more important for these police departments to do the same thing these industrial plants have done, build knowledge, understanding, and trust in these communities that they are responsible for protecting and serving. And with all of the controversy that we've seen, all of the social unrest that we've seen across the country, this process can be a shining light to help these police departments, and particularly their chiefs of police, to connect in a more significant and meaningful way with these communities. And so we're working with some really exciting partners to bring this to these police departments around the country. And what we want to do is have it fully funded. So in other words, work with the Department of Justice, work with the National Urban League, work with the National Police Foundation, work with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the NBA, the NFL, to fund this process so that these, in many cases, financially strapped police departments don't have to come out of their own pockets to do it. And so that process is underway. Spent most of the morning working on that today. And it's just got our entire firm excited about what we're doing. That is
just so exciting.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's needed for the public, but obviously the police as well. I mean, it's needed on both sides of the equation, which is always the instance for what you've done.
Well, that knowledge, understanding, and trust that we build is a two-way street, right?
Exactly.
We want to build it both for the client, who would be the police department in this situation and the community that they serve. And so when you do that, again, you put that goodwill in the bank both ways, and that open line of communication. Police Chief Murphy Paul, I put this quote in our business plan. He said to his council at our December meeting, right before Christmas, he said, "I can't tell you what this group has meant to us." And he's displayed all of the policy changes that they have made as a result of guidance and input that they have gotten from this council. And he said, what we figured out is, as police department leaders, this quote, "Sometimes we don't know if you don't take the time to tell us." And that's what we do. We facilitate them being able to tell them.
Wouldn't it be interesting if this could turn out to be some of the most important work that you do in your career?
So, Andrew, that's really what I want to end my career with. I've gotten to the point now, having done this for 30 plus years, that I don't want to do check the box activities anymore. Right? We even say in our mission statement on our website that we've just updated, we want to do meaningful work, stuff that really moves the needle, not just for the clients, but for the communities that they operate in. I've done the check the box stuff at times in my career, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. This is an opportunity to do something really, really meaningful at the end of my career.
Well, I was going to ask you what motivates you, but I think you just defined it.
That's what motivates me.
And so how would you define success, Tim?
Peace of mind. It's simple for me.
Yeah.
I probably, there's a chance, Andrew, I could have made a lot more money if I'd have stayed in the career path I was on and done the consulting on this. But there's a comfort in knowing that you are responsible for, what happens, and that you're sort of charting your own course. And so there was an old song that John Cougar Mellencamp did, and he talks about being on a bus with an old man, and he said the old man was telling him stories, and one of the lines in the song, the old man went to sleep with his head against the window. He said, "An honest man's pillow is his peace of mind," and that's that's kind of stuck with me all these years. That's what success is. It's peace of mind.
So, what role have mentors played in your career?
Oh, I don't know how to quantify it.
I mean, like the number that I perceive from you, the number of mentors.
Oh, it's been incredible.
It's a pretty big number.
I have been blessed to have relationships with, depending on how you define it, some of the most successful people in Louisiana. You think about Mike Foster, and you think about Jay Darden, and on the political side, and Foster Campbell, and Bill Cassidy, and all of these different people that I've developed relationships with over the years, and then the industrial guys. But if I think back, there are 4 or 5 guys that stick out for me. Art Favre has been just a guy that I've admired for years and had been really good to me. Eddie Risponi, been really important in a personal relationship in my life. Andy Dupuy has been important to me. Mr. Roland Toops treated me with respect. Don McCollister, Richard Gill, Lane Grigsby has been better to me than I ever deserved. I've just had the opportunity to be around some of the smartest, most successful people. But you know what marks them all is that in their own way, they're first really good people, and then they're successful at whatever they do. And that's something that I've tried to emulate.
And look, there's a lot of generosity in that group.
Oh, unbelievable.
There's some people
I've personally been the beneficiary of that generosity, no question.
There's certain people that look at hyper successful people like those you just named, just not those in particular, but just successful people as being greedy or whatever, without acknowledging the magnitude of the impact that they've had through their philanthropic activities and their generosity. And these guys have done massive things for the community, for the state.
And never have an interest in anybody really knowing about it. I have no idea how much money in combination Eddie Risponi, Art 5, Lane Grigsby, and Roland Toops have given away in there, just given away without ever wanting any kind of notoriety for it. I think that number would boggle the mind if it were ever made public.
They've helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
Look, let's start to wrap up, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the state of the industry in Louisiana today as it relates to changes in oil and gas and petrochemical in general. What's your take on that?
Well, it's certainly a different time, right? There are a lot of there's a lot of environmental activism, and what I say about that is that we all should be environmentalists to some degree, right?
Sure.
We all want clean air and clean water.
Right.
There's a risk reward with everything we do. We also want the fabulous life improving products that the industry produces and that we utilize every day, right? So there's a balance there. I think that if you look at the performance, particularly environmentally, of the industry over the last 15 or 20 years, it's been spectacular, and they've really done great work in improving that aspect of their business. But there's no question but that oil and gas, hydrocarbons are under attack, and that people are looking to move away from that. Now, I still think that while the move away from hydrocarbons may be accelerated to a degree, it's still going to be a long, long time, Andrew, before any of the alternative forms of energy get to the point where they can sustain the economy the way oil and gas does. And so I think we're going to be relying on it for another 20, 25 years in some form or fashion. But I think technology will catch up too. Congressman Garrett Graves said it really well, and I'll leave you with this. You can't pick one side or the other in this argument, right? We're all environmentalists, but we also need the life-altering products that come from industry as well. And if we think about it, it is industry with their research and development and their technology and their deep pockets and their experience that will lead us to solving some of the world's most pressing environmental problems. They will do it, and we'll take advantage of that. So we can't constantly attack them because they're good people trying to do good work. And so, I think we're going to see it for a while, although there's no question but that it has been under attack.
Yeah, great stuff, man. Tim, I can remember all those years ago, the first time that I ever heard you speak. It was at, I can remember what building I was in, where I was standing, and just being like very, very impressed with your presence, your intellect, and your ability to communicate effectively. And it is certainly no surprise that I'm sitting here across the table from you all these years later, knowing what a fantastic business that you've built, the impact that you've had on communities and through your communications. And so it's just a great honor for me to talk to you, and I'm really proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm proud to know you, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, let me just say that the feeling is absolutely mutual. I'm grateful for your kind words, and it's been a real pleasure not just to be on your show today, but to have known you for all these years and watched your own success and, sort of admired that from my perspective as well. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
You bet.
Anyone who's spent time with Tim Johnson knows what a gifted communicator he is. It was so exciting to listen to him talk about his most recent project with the police department. With the discourse that we have in our culture between the police and the general public, I can't think of another individual that possesses the skill set to address this opportunity better than Tim. We wish him and his team the best in all that they do, but particularly on that program. If you want to reach Tim, you can find him at at TJCGroup.com. We appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Mainspring Companies. It can be reached online at mainspringcompanies.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at ask@nxtentrepreneur.com. You can subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can help support our podcasts by leaving a review on Apple Music. You can follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this episode with your family and friends. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. They can be reached at propelyourstory.com. Today's episode was produced by Daniel Sagona.